Hi, good evening. It is about 8:15 Pacific Daylight Time. It is Monday, June the 24th, and it's the day after the final round, round 10 of the 2019 Group 5 Proxy Series. In fact, it is the last race for now for the Group 5 cars as we switch to the GT3 cars for next season. And as I've done in the past, I'm going to take a look underneath the bodies and show you what I see, and hopefully we both learn something. And without further ado, I think it's only appropriate that we start with the winner of the 2019 season, all the way from Australia. Last year, Camber had a very nice hybrid chassis. It was a combination of carbon fiber and a few other materials, like I think brass, and he won last year's series. I think this year Camber thought he'll use something that is more readily available, something that we can all purchase and see if he can repeat. And indeed he did, using this time a playfit chassis, which I believe originally comes from Japan, and proves to be very popular in Australia. A chassis we don't see that often, well, at least not in this region, but I think this is probably one of the first playfit chassis I've seen in a proxy series, at least probably the most successful playfit chassis I've ever seen in a proxy series during the last few years. So what I will do is, since I built one of these chassis myself recently for a Can-Am car, which appears with less success than this particular playfit, we'll take a look and see what's underneath. One thing I have learned is how to remove the chassis versus last year, when I think I unscrewed about 3 or 4 screws, and neither one of those would have none of those took the body off. So it's a straightforward playfit, some really nice anodized 2mm screws. So this particular section, I think this is called the H plate. The body mounts to it, and as if you can see, it actually floats in between these screws and those 2 screws, and you can slightly adjust the amount of float by spacers that go. Just checking the video to see if you can see what I can see. There's a spacer in this spot, and by having a longer spacer, if that makes sense, or a shorter spacer, you can adjust the amount of play on this plate. Then they're using these. I did not have these for my Can-Am car, but they're using these adjustments. This particular plate, or this plate is attached to the guide, and you can see that there is also play. Not sure if it's showing up there, but the whole front assembly is connected to that plate, and it can actually move slightly, which allows the wheels, just checking the video to see if it's actually showing, but it allows the wheels to move slightly depending if you're going through a left or right corner. Let's see if this makes sense. So it's actually, there's a slight amount of movement. In this particular case, it's been limited by these 2 adjustment screws. Without those screws, you can get more or less play. And then there are further 2 screws. Again, I'm not sure if it shows up on the video, but let's see if I hold it like that. There are 2 further screws here, which allows you to adjust the actual ride height of the front axle. I think that's how it works. I am certainly not an expert. let's get to a few things that I might know a little bit more about. The tires, they are in good condition. Again, let's see, in good condition. There is some graining on the inside of both these wheels. Quite a bit of radii on both these rear wheels. Very smooth and definitely coated front tires. These cars are heavy. The chassis, even without the body, weighs in at, let's call it 89 grams, 88.7. And with the body on top, we're looking at a car that's just shy of 115 grams. So what I find interesting is really the combination of the weight. Obviously the weight distribution, you can see there's been a little bit of weight added at the back, and how that makes the tire work or not. In this particular case, it looks like could be an Ultra, but I'm pretty sure that he told me these are super grips, and it's definitely an air rim. So this wheel has, you can feel the tire. Well, the tire's actually, yeah, there's definitely an air gap. I don't know if there's sponge inside or not. There's definitely an air gap in these wheels. And you can see, if you won't be able to see on the video, but if you look closely, you can see that the tires have worn slightly differently on the outer edges compared to the middle. I'm not sure what motor this is. Perhaps a Fox or a Playfit. And this car won the series. I think he won in total about 4 races. Definitely ended up winning the series. Did break a guide in round 9, which Rob replaced. So congratulations, Camber. An excellent and very interesting entry. Something that I am personally, at this point in time at least, finding a little bit more complicated than I'm used to. Something that I think I'm going to, for the moment at least, stick to the plastic chassis, which I'm more familiar with. So that's car number 1, Camber. Let's move on to a couple of other cars that I picked at random, just to show some interesting designs. This car is Audi 1's BMW. Alan organizes and manages a number of proxy events and series. How he gets time to enter his own car, I have no idea. But let's take a look and see what he did. This car did not do as well this year as it's done in the past. I think he's currently in and around 18th position in the series. I'm not sure after round 10 if he moved up or down or stayed. But a very interesting design. As you can tell, the chassis has been cut to allow flex, but that flex has then been limited by a piece of piano wire. I'm just going to see if I can get a little bit more light on the subject for you. Let's see if this will work. Maybe that's slightly better. So that is a very interesting design. These 2 pieces of piano wire limiting the amount. Now, I would imagine if you used a thicker piece of wire, there would be less flex. If there is a thinner piece of wire, there would be more flex. Again, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see on the video, but there's just a slight movement that's independent of the pot. Pot is down quite tight. Very little movement in the pot. There's movement in the back of the pot. but very little in the front. Looks like he's using a couple of neoprene washers. I know this is a design that Chris Guy, he likes using these small O-rings underneath the motor pod to absorb some of the vibration and allow for some movement. But this pod is fairly tight, and you do see some chassis movement. A very interesting design, quite a bit of weight up front. I personally use very little weight in the front of the car, but obviously to get this weight distribution where he wanted, he needed to add some weight in the front. A very nicely made chassis and a very interesting design that looks like a 24 spur gear. The tires on his car, again, a little bit of wear on the inside edges, quite a square corner, and very nicely polished and hardened front tire, super hard front tires with just a slight bevel on the inside, just to decrease the width or the resistance from the front tires. Beautifully machined or trued front tires. Those are really nice. So that is car number 19. And also notice a couple of O-rings on the body. Just a couple of, I think those, yeah, a couple of small O-rings on the body. Let's see what this car weighed. Coming in at 73 grams exactly without the body, and with the body coming in at just, well, exactly 90 grams. I'm a little bit surprised that car number 19 didn't do better. Certainly a lot of attention to detail. Okay, let's see what else. I think I showed this car last year. This is actually Chris Guy's car. Always a strong performer, and one of the few inline cars that I've seen race successfully. Traditionally on our wood tracks with no magnet racing, the Sidewinder cars have performed better, especially using the S-Can motor. But Chris has been able to make these inlines work very well. Looks to me like he added some weight. I can't remember, but I don't remember. I can't remember for sure, but I don't recall seeing this weight on the chassis last year. The tires are excellent condition. I see almost no, no graining. They're in really good condition. They've worn very nicely. They look well polished. I'm using one of these PNN machined inline motor parts. I think they originally came from Japan. They were quite expensive, and then price sort of came down to a more affordable level. I haven't seen them recently. As I mentioned earlier, you can see he likes using these O-rings, and it looks to me absolutely there are a couple of O-rings underneath the motor pod, there and there. Very little movement in the pod itself. Just a beautiful and neat and tidy built. Chris was in position number 13 as of round 9. He did well in this last race. I think he came 4th or 5th. No, he didn't come 4th. Maybe he came 5th, 6th. Chris Guy. So excellent built. Making sure that I put things together so I can find it again. This body has been used for a few seasons, and it looks like it's got a couple of cracks, but I doubt you'll be too worried about that. It's done well. Let's take a look at who else. Let's take a look at car number 70. I think Smokey O, Mike, it's fair to say, is probably one of the most respected proxy entrants in North America. He has won numerous races and he has won numerous series. This is his traditional white and yellow with some black mixed in. A beautiful, actually, airbrush job on this. This is one of the nicest jobs I've seen, or paint jobs that I've seen on one of these cars. They always look very similar. You can recognize them very easily, and it's sort of a matte finish. I doubt there is a clear coat on this body, probably to keep it as light as possible and easy to see, especially for Mike, who needs all the help he can get. Always have a good banter with Mike on the forum. I kind of feel sorry for this particular car this year, because it started off relatively slow and then it went out east, and on the tracks that run silicone from time to time, this car did very well. I think it won 2 or 3 races in a row, and he was leading the championship, and then the cars came back to Canada, and not sure what happened, but the car did not perform as well once it was back on the Western Canadian tracks. And I know Rob took a look at this car and wanted to see if there was perhaps something. You know what I do see? Perhaps. Not sure if this is on purpose or if this is, well, by design, or if it is the way it's worn. It is possible. The tire has got a sort of, as it looks almost like a piece of plastic on the outside of the wheel, and so I assume that it has been added to give the wheel a little bit, or the tire a little bit more sidewall rigidity. I don't think it's worn that way. If it was rubbing against the body, no, I don't think so. I don't see any marks on the inside of the body, any noticeable marks or anything like that. So I assume it did not. That's a very clever idea. There is a plastic ring on the outside of the wheel, or the tire, I should say, and it obviously gives the tire the sidewall of the tire a little more rigidity or less flex, and I'm wondering why that would be. I'm wondering if Mike will tell us why that is. But interesting. He's using a 3D printed pod. I think it's from CG, from Matt. Quite a bit of movement in the pod. This is one of the new 25K ball bearing motors, Piranha ball bearing motors. Really got a strong magnet. And I have noticed, in fact, me and Super Slab have noticed how the axle can actually sort of bind up a little bit because of the power of this magnet. And you can see Mike, this particular pod is running at a slight angle, similar to what you'll see in an NSR. A slotted pod would run this motor much closer to the axle, and I think that could cause a problem based on how strong this magnet is. Interestingly enough, Mike's car has weight up front, but no weight on the motor part. So he has really gone with a different sort of design. Is there some weight perhaps there? No, there's no weight. This motor was very smooth. I've since tested a couple of these new Piranhas, and for me personally, the jury's out on this particular motor. I'm not sure if the design changed or if it was just maybe the car or the weight of the car I had, but it felt different than this motor in Mike's car. Mike's was quite smooth. This car just lacked a little bit of grip. And I'm checking the tires. The tires are definitely slightly blistered. There's definitely some wear on it, but typical of a Smokio car, everything is absolutely perfect. Wires all glued in. Front tires absolutely beautifully machined. So they coat it with super glue and then through afterwards. Nice job. So this is car number 70. Let's have a look and see. I do believe these are super grip tires as well. 72.6, and with body on, we're looking at just, let's call it 90 grams, 89.5. Mike was in position. Smokio was in position number 5 prior to this race, but I don't know the results. I know the results of round 10, but I don't know the totals. Okay, so car number 70. Don't see any issue with anything binding or anything. So I don't really know why the performance dropped off. I personally think it has something to do with the way the car handles on tracks that also runs silicone versus the way the other cars, because my cars never seem to do well out east, and then they do better out west. So anyways, let's take another car that to me was I know I'm good friends with Rob, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but this is car number 10. This is the second season that this particular car came back. I don't know, but based on Rob's summer activities and camping and everything else, I don't think he had a lot of time for building this car, and I would say this car is almost identical to the car that he's had last year. And so this car with its motor and everything else, at least a season old, if not at least 2 seasons old now. So anyways, well, so a couple of interesting things. This car was super smooth, and if you look at the results on Home Racing World of round 10, and in particular if you look at Super Slab's analysis, which by the way is brilliant, especially if you're a mathematician, you'll see how consistent this particular car has been. The percentages I think was up in like 98 or 90, I don't know, high 90s. So that speaks to both drivers that were driving yesterday being able to drive this car consistently at the limit. Very, very impressive. This car was so nice to drive. I told Rob this morning, if you wanted to just go and take a slot car and drive around my track, this is the one you want to take. Just if you just want to have a relaxing but fast slot car experience, copy this car. It was just absolute joy to drive. So he was running Ultra Grips. By the way, Smokio also ran Ultra Grips, I remember now. What's interesting about this car, again, I'm not sure if you can see, but a very square profile on the tire. A very square profile. And he's got a little bit of super glue on the outside edge of the tire. Not sure if you can see, which gives the sidewall definitely some extra rigidity. And this is not an air wheel. This wheel does not feel like an air wheel, so it's a solid feel to it. By the way, let's see if Smokio perhaps, I think it's an air wheel that it wore, maybe with foam inserts. I don't feel any significant softness in the center of that tire, unlike Camber's, who was very soft in the center. Quite a bit of weight on the pod, weight on the side, and weight up front. I'll show my car next, and I use the same 320 chassis, so quite different. In fact, why don't we open mine and put it beside that one. So this is car number 7. I think I've come second in this proxy more times than anyone else, and I repeated my second place this year. This car is actually the same car, other than the fact that I wanted a different body. Last year I painted the body and multiple clear coats and multiple colors and everything else, and the body weighed quite a bit. So I decided to reuse the chassis, essentially the motor, everything else, but built a slightly lighter car, a lighter body. I added some weight to the chassis from last year, but not much, just a few grams. So maybe, I think maybe 4 grams. You can check on Home Racing World, you'll find all the specs. I can't remember, to be honest. Okay, so open her up. Put these pieces of tape just so that if the screws come loose, they don't fall out. My car was quick. I don't think it had more punch than Rob's, and Rob and I was in a battle for second place for all throughout the season. His car did better out east than my car did, and then when we came back on the Kelowna tracks, my car did a little bit better than his, I think. No, he won the one race in Kelowna, but then I won at his track. No, I didn't win. I came second. And I outqualified him here on my track, which gave me the extra 2 points, which I think was kind of the nail in the coffin. Okay, so let's have a look. Body of car number 10 weighs in at exactly 18 grams. Body of car number 7 feels heavier, weighs in, oh, it's lighter, 16.1. So 16.1 for car number 7 and 18. So 2 grams difference in the bodies of these two BMWs, car number 10 and car number 7. And let's have a look at the chassis. So you can see that. I too have a bit of weight. By the way, he built his car completely independently from mine. hopefully people are building their own cars. I think that makes more sense. But you can see that there's a bit of weight in the front. So do I have a bit of weight in the front. I have some weight here on the motor part, and he has some weight on the motor part. I have a little bit of weight here on either side. It's underneath this yellow tape, and he has a bit more weight on the side right there. I have a 30k scale auto, and I believe the purple gear is the purple at 35 spur gear with a 10. So I've got a 10.35, or is that a 36? 10 and 36, so 1.36 or 1.35. Rob has a, I think that's the 35 gear, and looks like a 10 pinion, so he might be the 10.35. I'm not 100% sure. Let's have a quick look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Might be 11. You can check on Home Racing World. You'll find all the specs. So anyway, let's have a look and see. His chassis weighs in at 67. Let's call it 68 gram. Mine weighs in at 70. So about 2 grams difference. With the body on, mine comes in at 87 grams, and with the body on, his comes in at 85.6. So almost identical. This car has good movement in the pod. This flex across the front of the chassis is quite important. The wheels, not much play in the front axle. Solid front axle. And yeah, let's have a look at mine. So a little bit of play in the front axle, independent front axle, and movement in the pod. Quite a bit of movement in the pod. Both cars have tape on the bottom. I've tape lengthwise and across, and he has some tape lengthwise and across, so not much difference. Tires. My tires definitely showing some blisters. Sorry, I just have a sticky on my finger. Definitely showing some blisters. Again, you probably won't be able to see this, but there's some hairline cracks in the tire. Hairline cracks. And the Ultra Grips, mine's Super Grip. Interesting, it looks almost like it's worn a little bit cone shaped. Maybe that's just an illusion, but tires look good. Tires look good. I think they look better on his car than mine. So okay, car number 10, car number 7. Let's get those out of the way. What else will we look at? Take a look at. Let's take a look at this this car just very quickly. This is Richard, or Tequila Kid. Had a name change. He used to be Coquitlam Kid. And then one of the guys in Calgary did a live video and kept on calling him Tequila Kid. And when he joined Home Racing World, it's now Tequila Kid. So when I drove this car, it was very quick. I will have to say that these tires, and I'm looking at them again. I looked at them when I qualified the car. Unfortunately, you couldn't hear the video, but I mentioned then that these tires are super sticky. I think they've been polished and now during the season, and they felt really good. You could actually hear the slight sort of that, I don't know how to describe it, squealing of the tire. This car was really fast. It wasn't quite as consistent, but it was really quick. I mentioned on the previous video that I would even be tempted to reuse these tires on another car if possible, if they're the right size. But I think these are some of the best worn or end of season tires that I've seen. It was just not quite as consistent. It was a fast car, but it just was a little bit more difficult to tame. Also using the scale order 30K motor, but in an angle winder position, as you can tell from the glue. It looks like a urethane type of glue. The motor has been glued in, the bushings have been glued in, quite a bit of weight here on the pod, weight here up front as well, reinforced guide with some additional glue or epoxy. It's probably a epoxy glue, probably not a urethane. Epoxy glue, yes, it was I mean, these cars are all so really, really good. But you can ask any of the guys that drove them during the season. I'm not exactly sure why one car ends up being first and why one car ends up being seventh, because if you actually look at them, they're all good. I guess there are just a few cars that got the combination of speed and handling and drivability, got it more right than others. Chassis weighs in at 68.4, and with the body on top, it comes in at around 86 grams. So just wanted to show this car mostly because you couldn't hear my comments when I qualified, but the tires on this particular car are in really good shape. By the way, if you get your cars back and the bodies are not as tight or as loose as they used to be, it's only because of tonight. It wasn't like that before. I'm not taking the time to adjust them or putting them back exactly the way I found it. Let's have a look at what is essentially a very standard Sideways BMW M1. This car is from Hawaii, belongs to Lancelot of Love, and it is a Sidewinder with a 30K Shark. These NSR 30K motors, they pack a lot of punch, and you have to have your car absolutely dialed in to take advantage of those motors, because they are powerful and they are fast. And if you have any issues with your handling or your car, it's going to show twice as badly as it would with a less powerful motor. So wow, okay, very interesting build. As one of these tungsten weights on the motor pod. Looks like there might be a little bit of weight underneath, but quite a little bit more play than I would say that I'm used to in the axle. That gold is a 35, I'm pretty sure. Quite a wide front tire. It doesn't look like it's coated. It feels quite sticky. Rear tires are quite blistered. Definitely looks to me like this is an air wheel, as far as I can tell. This car was super fast. I think it ended the season in and around, at a strong race at my track. It was in ninth position when it came to my track 9th, I think it is. So might have moved up. This was a fast car. Just wanted to show it because, quite frankly, it's very basic. Not a lot of, fancy stuff. Motor is glued in. Just a solid, well-prepared car with good tires that ended, I would say, the season within the top 10. So nice job on this build. Goes to show you don't need to get complicated to get a good result, or you don't have to get fancy. Sometimes back to basics is just fine. Most of the Sideways cars have used a slotted pod versus the Sideways, which comes mostly standard with an angle winder. So that's car number 24, and I think we'll just do a couple more. Let's do car number 5. Let's take a look at car number 5, Redliner. Also one of these guys, somebody that I looked up to, especially when I started racing or entering proxies. Steve always had good results, and always admired the cars that he entered. This particular car, while it looks like it lost a piece of weight somewhere during the season, unless he only had weight on the one side, it's possible, but looking at the mark there, I think there was a piece of weight there before. It has some weight up front. It has weight on the motor part. It's a Sidewinder yellow end belt 28K slotted. That is, I think the silver is the 32 spur in a slotted motor part. Another example of just a well-prepared car, nothing fancy, nothing overly complicated, just a nicely built car. The tires on here, a little bit of, there's definitely some graining on these. Take a look and see. Chassis comes, sorry, that again. Chassis comes in at 66 grams, with the body on top coming in at around 82. So fairly light car, and Redliner always does well. He was in 10th position. I'm not sure if he finished the season in 10th or not, but was definitely in the top 10 when this car arrived here at my track. So that is Redliner. Steve is from Michigan. So howdy, Steve. A big Honda fan, or Honda motor fan. Okay, so that is car number 5. I do one or two more. I think I said that. I wanted to open this car because Les is a friend of mine from Kelowna. This car was in 15th position. The one thing I admire with Les is, of Les I should say, and the cars that he enters, he is never shy to experiment and try something different. And he builds his own chassis. He tries different stuff. I think it's really cool. A lot of them have been in plexiglass or Lexan. And in this particular car, he's got some ball bearings, or weight, look at that, in 2 tubes along the side. Now, I know there are plenty of you that have lots more experience with slot cars than I do. But apparently back in the day, people used a plate that moved from the front to the back, or the back to the front. So the idea being, as you braked and came into a corner, the weight would shift to forward, which will give you more pressure on the guide, and then as you accelerated out of the corner, the weight would move to the back and put weight on at the back of the car to give you more traction out of the corner. And I assume that these bits of weight moving back and forth did exactly that, or was helping to do that. The one thing about this chassis, it was super smooth, but there is absolutely no flex in this chassis. Maybe a tiny bit, no, nothing that would be noted on a track, but just super neat, super tidy, and very interesting design. I think I would be very tempted to try a similar design again, but I think it needs just a little bit of flex. Wonder if you were to do one of these with a slotted motor part, for example, if that would just give you that little bit of movement that you may need. The tires look in excellent condition. Just like Tequila Kid, I would be very tempted to reuse these tires. They are in they are super smooth. Sorry, just taking a look to see. They've worn really well. A little bit square on the edges. Might be tempted to round them, although I'm noticing that there are some guys like Rob that run the car with a more square edge. Front tires also look good. This tire is definitely worn a bit. Let's have a look and see. Weight of the chassis, about 77.4 grams. Body, car came in around just shy of 99, 98.7. So very interesting design, Les. Well done, and kudos for trying something different. So we're just screwing some of these down because I don't want the screws to get lost. Okay. I've got 3 more cars here, so might as well do them. Coming up just short of an hour, so let's see if I can get this video done. 1 hour max. So this is car number 79. This is Jimmy Slots out of Australia, a buddy of Camber, and I think I've been told, or I read on the forum, that he has won a Playfit championship in Australia a couple of times at least. So let's have a look and see. Very similar to Camber's car. Also using these, Camber can maybe post and let us know what these things are called, or Jimmy can let us know what these are called, but it just allows for this front to be limited or adjusted. It looks like, if you look at this car, if you can tell from this angle, this one has quite a bit more movement than Camber's. So if I look at that, yeah, this is sort of more loose, and this one I think has more movement, but it's spring loaded. That one is just sort of flops around. This one definitely has some tension, so it's spring loaded. The H plate again with movement, lots of rubber marbles. I'm not sure of the motor. You adjust the ride height by putting these pieces of plastic shims underneath to keep it in place. Yeah, Nice, nice build. Car number 79. These cars are heavy. Let's see if there was weight added to this. I don't see any weight. Maybe using a thicker chassis. I'm not exactly sure, because with, well, let's have a look. So this is Canberra's car. There is some weight just in front of the motor, and it weighs in at 88.8. I don't see any additional weight. Motors look about the same size, same type. So why does it feel heavier? It's 97 grams. So what is making this chassis that much heavier? So I'll try this again. That is 97 grams. And this is 88.8. So almost 9 grams difference. And I'm not 100% sure why there's a difference in the weight. So this one belongs to Canberra, and this one belongs to Jimmy Slot, and all of these guys, including our friends from Hawaii, which is Lancelot of Love and Aloha, I'm pretty sure they've taken the team championship. Speaking of Aloha, let's have a quick look. I wouldn't be surprised if him and Lance collaborated. It also has a 30k motor. I think this car came in around the top 5 or 6 in round 10, and prior to this round 10 it was, looks to me like, in 6th position. So, well, look at that. Nice Hawaiian flag, and a little bit of weight on the side, a little bit of weight on the motor pod. Dale is also a strong supporter of proxies, multiple proxies, always has a strong and consistent entry. In fact, last year he didn't do as well, but this year he's back stronger than ever with a really good entry. Definitely some blistering on the tires. Also looks to me like this is an air tire, meaning there's an air gap. So let's have a quick look and see. Car weighs in at about 70 grams, 70.3. Body on top comes in at 86.4. Let's just do that one more time. 70, and with the body 86.5. So this was a fast car. These NSR motors are definitely quick, and you need the car to handle. Pod movement, lots of movement, a little bit of tape across front of the pod sideways. Compared to Lance, very similar in designs, and interesting to see what these guys work on for GT3 entries. So car number 4. Okay, next up we'll do another Australian and part of the, so car number 4, car number 24, car number 79, car number 1, and car number 50. This is Roscoe. They all were part of the Pacific team. There's also Slot Racing Hawaii was part of that team, and I'm fairly certain that they have won the team championship. We'll wait for Rob's official results. And why is it stuck? Well, there's something interesting. Rob, Roscoe, I don't know if you know this and if this was done on purpose, but it looks like some glue, either from the weights. Let's have a look. Glued the body to the one side. So perhaps you did that on purpose? That would be surprising. But can you see Can you guys see that? Maybe the glue was not completely dry by the time he put it on, or perhaps it went soft. That certainly would have played a role in the body float, but regardless, this car did really well. So I'm not... that's interesting. This car was in Gas 41T, was in 7th position. So I would have loved to have seen this car run without the body glued to the one side. Wow, okay. Well, that's, I don't know if that, perhaps did the car get hot at some point, and did that melt this? It's sort of like a gooey putty. Maybe it was there for weight, but perhaps it wasn't really traveling much in the summertime, but I don't know. So this is car number 50, and again, very straightforward. There's some weight on the motor pod. It looks like perhaps it's like a plasticine, and the tires are quite blistered. There is also some weight up front, and I think this is one of the best results Roscoe has had in the last 3 or 4 seasons that he's entered our proxy. Maybe 5 or 6 seasons. So that was a great car. So I am quite surprised by the body and chassis sticking together like that. Maybe that's the secret to success, Roscoe. I don't know. Yeah. I personally would say it wasn't intended to be that way, but who knows? Definitely stuck to the one side. Okay, so that is car number 50. And last, we'll do this car number 77. I'm not going to have time to do all the cars. I trust you be okay with that. This is our friend from Nausk Electric USA, or Hornby USA, Tony, who was with Fantasy Hobbies for the longest time. Another one of these guys, whenever you see one of these cars in a proxy, you will always know it will be there or thereabouts. So let's have a look. A BMW 320 and in Warsteiner colors. Suddenly feel like a beer. Let's have a look. So some weights up front. These are little tungsten weights from Slotted. Some more weight up in here. A little weight on the motor pod. Interestingly enough, a bare one. Oh, there is tape. Sorry, there is tape underneath. But not a lot of room there between those two wires there, Mr. Tony, but I guess it worked. Anyways, playing with a bit of fire, I would say. No pun intended. A little bit of weight on the side. 25k Shark. This is absolutely, if you just want a good motor to enter a proxy, you can never really go wrong with a 25k Shark. You might not win, but you will you'll have a good performing car, and you might win. I'm not saying the motor won't win a proxy. Of course, it's won many proxies. It's a great motor, absolutely great motor, and always super consistent. Very smooth. I think Rob also had a 25k in his car. So always a strong and excellent choice. So let's have a quick look at this and see. I'll start wrapping up by saying, babbled on a little bit. Hopefully you can all understand my strange South African / Canadian accent. Spent more time in Canada than I ever did in South Africa, but even so, my accent is my accent. 66.8 grams, and with the body on, it is 84.7. So thanks again to each and every one of you for entering the 2019 season. Thank you for the support of the series. I look forward to seeing your GT3 entries. I look forward to hosting the shootout to see which of the 24 cars are going to go into the 10 rounds, of which 9 will count. I want to congratulate Camber again for winning back-to-back championships, and enjoy your summer. It's going to be maybe a little bit less activity on the forum for the next little while. The due date, I believe, if I remember correctly, is November the 18th. And please remember that the deadline for entry fees is June the 30th, which is a week away, or less than a week away. So thanks again for entering. Good night.